All right. Third.
That's gonna be a few minutes.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Seeing none. All right. So. Oh, this is mine. Okay. Hey. Welcome, Bob. How are you, Senator Gaida?
Better than I was yesterday, and hopefully I'll be tomorrow.
Yay, verily. All right, so we don't have Senator Perkins Croker here yet.
Should be here soon.
Okay. So maybe we can start off on my bill then, while we're waiting. And that will be Senate Bill 262. And there was an explanation sent to us. I don't know, did all of you get this?
No, I don't.
Oh, they didn't? Basically, a summary of explanation of the amendment on 262. You didn't get this? I thought everybody got this.
I just haven't, I was away all day yesterday, so maybe I just didn't see it.
All right. Basically, on the amendment, it's basically a summary of what we did. Yeah, I'll just read it. Basically, a number of issues at the public hearing. Many of these changes had to do with the fine-tuning of the bill and to make it work better. These changes would include the following. Number one, where the bill includes references to the size of the project or customers, the bill needed also to be set the upper levels at 5 megawatts. Section 1 also needed to say, but less than 5 megawatts. So we did that. Excuse me. Second point, Cliff Buelow pointed out that the same proportions of Section 2 on February 17th, the amended and the bill was introduced, were not needed, so that these sections were previously repealed with the bills from last year. Those have been deleted. I don't know if you remember that. Part 3, the bill also deals with the changes to the existing net metering laws around small and large customer cutoffs, where the bill made some changes to 100 kilowatts versus 500 kilowatts. Today, the definition of small versus large customers is in the PUC rules, but not in state law, so this amendment makes it clearer that the small customer is less than 500 kilowatts and the large customer is 500 kilowatts or larger. And the last point, the bill also needed a number of changes to have the interconnection investigations to be done by the Department of Energy and not by the PUC. I don't know if you folks remember that. So that they can check, hey, what's happening here? Why is it being stalled out? So what's going on with that? So that's with the amendment. I don't know if you have some discussions, if there's a motion.
I'd like to hear from the department.
Sure. Is the department here? Hey, department. How are you? Good to see you, Josh.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Josh Elliott, Director of Division of Policy and Program.
Is your mic on? All right.
There we go. Sorry. Josh Elliott with the Department of Energy.
Are we moving forward with the amendment, or are we moving backward with the amendment?
Which amendment are we working on?
We're working on
1053.
yes.
Okay, I do not have a copy of that.
Now you do. If you want to defer until after you have a chance to read it.
I would appreciate that, yes.
Okay.
Vacations, you know.
Do you have a copy of what you just read to give him?
Did I have a copy of this?
Because maybe that'll help him abbreviate his time.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in committee. Basically, it was almost an exec committee hearing, just fixing the bill itself, and with Cliff Buelow's input and everybody else's input. So, as far as moving forward, I don't know. We want to set the policy for the department, not the department for us. So that's why I'm here. But I just want to.
Certainly, Senator, that there were some disagreement and things that I wanted to see changed in there. Had many conversations with Josh. I think he understands at least part of what I was trying to accomplish. And so I believe that he understands what I meant when I said, are we moving forward or
Oh, I see,
backward?
I see, okay. I appreciate you clarifying that. And give you a second to read that, Josh, and say yes. So, all right, while you're reading that, let's move on. 270. 262. All right, so I want to take up 380. Is it 380? 380. I don't know if you all had a chance to look at the amendment. There's the latest amendment that was drafted. Senator Hennessy's not here, is she? Okay. There was a new amendment, and having talked with some folks, the first part of the amendment seemed to be okay, but the second part seemed to be rife with issues. We were talking about shalls and mays, and just by changing the shalls to mays doesn't mean it solves the problems. It basically probably invites more lawsuits. Having talked with some other folks, and I'm not really sold that this is ready for prime time, so I'm wondering if there's a motion for interim study so we can look into this for further.
I'll move interim study.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor for interim study? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. And so I will take it out. All right. 380 is done. Let's see. 368, pet vending. This is Senator Bradley's bill. He's been working on this. It seems like it's a perpetual bill. It seems to keep coming up over and over and over again. Basically, the bill details the process for transferring animals after an animal vending license is revoked. There is an amendment, and the amendment was 0265S.
I'll move to pass on amendment 0265S.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion.
I'm seconding for discussion purposes because I'm just looking at this. So.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, you know, I see the issues here, and it has to do with the hearings officers, and I know we have the commissioner here, and I didn't know if you had any further thought about whether this addresses the issues about supporting this.
Commissioner Jasper, for the record, and I don't know if you had seen the amendment. Does it solve anything? Does it create new problems?
So I'm not sure that I've seen exactly what you have. It was sent to me. I did have one suggestion, which is relatively minor. I essentially had written the draft of this because I listened very carefully to the testimony and realized that our original proposal was probably creating more problems than it was solving, but still needing to solve a problem. I tried to brainstorm and see what it was. So give me 1 second to see if that. Yes. So relatively minor on line 22, starting on a hearing officer every quarter shall forward an unpaid fine assessment. I really think that should be either the commissioner or the department, because the hearing officer would be actually a contracted officer and really shouldn't be in that position. So other than that, this amendment does that because this allows us to deal with the underlying problem is why are people operating without a license? Part of the problem is if you're selling an animal for $4,000 an animal, even $1,000 fine may not be sufficient to stop that illegal activity. And we're overwhelmed in the department with hearings. We're taking away so much time. This would, having this part of having the contracted hearing officers, as I'm sure you know, many departments have hearing officers who are dedicated. I certainly am not looking to add more employees, but I think this is a way to not increase our budget, to allow it to operate only when we have enough money in fines to allow us to contract. If we don't have money in there, we'll have to do it the way we've been doing it. So I think this is probably the best solution to deal with this ever-growing problem.
So, to be clear, you want a hearing officer left or struck and put in the commission?
Just in that line 22, where it starts a hearing officer, and it should, my opinion is, it should either say the commissioner or the department.
Okay. The commission, how about both?
How about just department?
Department?
I think the department works.
Responsible for the department.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think that's probably the best.
all right, so,
So I will withdraw my original motion and move the committee motion with that change.
okay, so on line 22, the department, strike hearing officer, the department shall. Is it we should specify which department, right? Yeah.
If you look at that paragraph, it starts out
Yeah.
with the Department of Agriculture right up in the first sentence.
Yeah. All right. So, you seconded it?
Seconded.
Yes.
New motion, yes.
Further discussion? All in favor of the the adjustment there? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Is there another motion?
Ought to pass as amended.
Second, discussion. Commissioner, everything else is fine? All right. All in
Yes.
favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none? Oh, one. All right. And is there a motion on the bill as amended?
I thought that's what we just did.
And then that's what we just did. I know, right? Too much coffee. Yes, yeah. So who would like to take this out?
Right, I could if you want.
All right.
I think I'm a
Senator Waters will
co-sponsor.
take this out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate you being here. Mr. Elliott. How we doing? Yeah.
Yes, I do have. A little better?
You had it and then it went bad. You had it a minute ago. Now. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so 262 again?
262. So Senator Gray, by your question, I'm assuming you're referring to the behind the meter load consumption question?
Right, we had the discussion on when it is X%, when it is 50%, when it is 80%, and all of those issues, I'm wondering how the department believes that they are resolved or not resolved in this amendment.
So looking at the amendment here, it would be on page 2. Sorry, I'm on amendment 1053S. Page 2, section 5, starting on line 29 following. There's a discussion about the on-site consumption behind the meter consumption requirements. You see in line 31 to 34, you have discussion about the facilities for net metering from 100 kilowatts up to 500 kilowatts with an in-service date of January 1st, 2022, with a requirement to consume a majority of the generation on site on an annual basis. Flipping back to page 1, lines 8 through 10, you have the 125% requirement, which translates to an 80% load behind the meter load consumption requirement for generators greater than 1 megawatt but less than 5 megawatts. And then to flip back to page 2, line 35 through 37 following, on to the next page, there's a discussion about the tariffs that generators of 500 kilowatts up to 5 megawatts would pay. Be paid. But there's no discussion about behind the meter load consumption requirement. So it would appear to be, just on this initial reading, that there's a gap between 500 kilowatts and the 1 megawatt. The 1 megawatt up being covered with the 125% requirement, but it does not appear here that there is any behind the meter load requirement for any facilities from 500 kilowatts up to 1 megawatt. If it's buried somewhere else in here, I'm happy to stand corrected, but I'm not seeing anything here on that.
So what would happen in the gap? So what would happen in the gap?
You would have no behind the meter load consumption requirement. Essentially, these could operate. You could just have a field of solar panels and be paid the net metering tariff without any load requirements. So you wouldn't have to be. You could just purely be a generator. You wouldn't have to consume any of it.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask, so did you have?
Senator Waters?
I don't know if I'm really following this, Josh, but if you look on page 2, line 24, 25, because there it's 500 kilowatts, but not more than 5 megawatts, doesn't that take care of the gap?
It speaks to, let's see, so that speaks to what they are paid in terms of the net metering, in terms of the actual tariff, but it doesn't have any, my read of it, I don't see any behind the meter load consumption requirements for that gap.
So put a reference to that line right there.
You would have to put in something. I think it would make more sense to put it into section 5, and I don't know if this was an oversight or because you have that discussion of the on-site consumption requirements where you have in lines 31 through 34, you talk about 100 to 500, and then there's a discussion about the tariff paid for 500 to 5 megawatts. But there's no sentence at the end saying what the consumption requirement would be.
What would a sentence look like?
I would mirror the language in the proposed Roman 4AA, and then insert some language depending on what the committee desired to have for a consumption requirement, given that you have a majority for 100 to 500 kilowatts. We would be interpreted as 50% plus 1, so 50.001, however far you want to carry it. I guess that would be a policy decision of the committee if you wanted to say majority, if you wanted to have some other number, because you have from 1 megawatt, as is stipulated in section 1 of the bill, from greater than 1 megawatt up to, but less than 5 megawatts, you have that 80% requirement. So you could, for it to make sense, you would want to have something between 50 and 80 for it to make sense.
50 and 80.
Between 50% and 80% as being the figure in between. I get that's a policy decision of the committee of what you would want to use for that.
Okay.
Senator Perkins-Coca?
Thank you, Chair. I guess 2 questions. One is, I'm trying to read the statute while we're sitting here. Are we sure there's not an on-site load consumption requirement elsewhere in 362A9?
I was trying to look that up as you moved
Yes.
on to this bill, so I'd be happy to stand corrected if there's another
No,
citation
I'm trying
requirement.
to do it as well. But then I guess secondly, wasn't there previously in place only a 20% on-site load consumption requirement, whereas now we might create that 80% load consumption requirement, so we may not want to go as high as 50 to 80% if we added another.
Yes, that is correct. So the current consumption requirement is a minimum of 20%. Obviously, a couple of exceptions if you're a group host for LMI or things like that.
Yeah.
My concern was that with the statute as it's proposed in this amendment, it would create a donut. So you would go from majority,
Yep.
and then I would assume would
Yep.
either default to 20 or without any other language would default to 20%
Right.
for the 500 to up to 1 megawatt, and then it would go to 80. So you'd have sort of this.
Yeah,
You'd have a dip in the middle.
Sure.
All right, so in order to make this work, this amendment work, and to fill that donut hole, does the department have any language that I could exec today?
I would mirror the language in the section above in lines 31 through 34 and just make it, you could just say something similar and just change the kilowatts, and then you would, it would be a policy decision about the in-service date and other requirements. I mean,
Senator Gaida?
Whilst we twiddle around in the weeds on percentages and so forth, the unspoken and yet still being studied issue of cost shifting is under review by the PUC. And while I would certainly favor refining net metering, I'm not going to do so until we have a report back that talks about whether or not the cost shifting is occurring by the folks that are best equipped to do that. So this is a nice refinement, all the things that we're talking about. But we still have the unanswered question, what is going on with cost shifting, and it's unanswered, and we are awaiting the completion of the study. For that reason, I will not be supporting this legislation.
All right. So,
Chair, I would support trying to insert some language here, but maybe we could have some help from somebody if we took a break from execing this one again. Personally, I'd like to.
well, there's no FN on it, so I guess I can wait one more week, but could the department or somebody come up with some language so that we're not guessing at what you want?
yeah. So I'll try to, maybe if I haven't been explaining it. Oh,
To rephrase it, it's probably more what I want than what the department wants, since I've squarely got my foot in his back. Okay?
What do
Just-
you want?
Again, I'll let them come up with the language, but it's to satisfy my request and not the department's request,
And
so.
Senator Gray, just while we're on the subject, I mean, I would be in favor of a lower on-site consumption requirement. I don't know if you have a preference to give them some direction on that.
We can certainly talk, Senator.
Okay.
All right.
and again, that would be purely a policy discussion. I mean, that would just be a matter of dropping in a number of where you would prefer the number.
Okay.
To start with, in deference to the senator, 20% sounds like a good number to me, because it will be consistent, graduating from 20% to 50%, and then graduating from there on up to the 80%.
Senator Waters?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was thinking, thinking back to Mr. Campbell's concerns, that lower number would probably be helpful for the kind of, turning facility, whatever you call it, that is coming
Trackers.
along.
Yep.
Because that is going to be a lot of the future of this kind of generation. And I think that if we did it at the level that Senator Gray is suggesting, we would actually help those kinds of producers.
So you think you could come up with something for us before next Tuesday?
Yes. I'm hopeful that depending on how long it takes you to exec your other bills, I might be able to come up with something
Won't take long.
quickly today, but
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think that if we could, we'll move on to the other ones, but if we can give him like 15 minutes and maybe even take a little recess, why not get this done?
Sounds like, that clock isn't right, right?
I think it needs a new battery.
Okay. All right. Would you mind?
It's 9:30.
I'll give it a shot, Senator.
Thank you very much. All right, so let's
Okay.
move on to the next bill.
Okay.
$271.
Do we have an amendment on that?
I believe.
Yeah, we do. Bradley.
Was that 096, 09?
0986.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
Mhm. Yeah, and that's on page 2, right?
Okay. So
Where was the or? That was,
You're on page 2 of the amendment,
yeah,
line 14. After, should be promote the viability of renewable energy infrastructure, or offset any impacts on ratepayers.
okay, instead
Or
of to
to.
offset.
Yeah.
Or to offset.
Okay.
And the first,
So I'll move a committee amendment that will be 986 with the or added.
Second.
okay,
Okay, so this is the exact same amendment we considered last week, right?
yes,
Yes, okay.
all right. Discussion? Senator Gray? In your mic?
On page 1, line 25, after the shall, I had open a docket 2.
That's what I have as well. As a matter of fact.
Yep.
You're right. Shall open a docket
Yeah,
to
that's right.
amend is what I have,
Senator Waters'
right?
magic language.
And then, of course, the or that
Yep.
was just pointed out.
Yep.
So, Daley, would you just read that to us on line 25?
So line 25, it will say, "The Public Utilities Commission shall open a docket to amend any of its orders as necessary," and so on.
Finish it? And to amend, right?
Yep, Public Utilities Commission shall open a docket to amend any of its orders as necessary.
Okay. And,
And then line 14, on page 2 of the amendment, promote the viability of renewable energy infrastructure or to offset any economic impact to ratepayers.
all right. So do you want to amend the, did we already have a motion to amend?
Committee amendment.
Yeah. So we
I'll
moved
second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Is there a motion on the bill?
I-
Yeah, on the bill to pass as amended.
Yeah, I second it.
All right, so we just passed the bill.
No.
No,
now
we
we-
got
now
to
we
vote.
Amendment, now you go to the bill.
That's what I just said, right?
You made a motion on the committee amendment.
We had a standing motion on the
I'll
bill.
move the bill ought to pass as
As
amended.
amended.
Okay.
Why I said that, I apologize.
Second.
Again, I'm headed.
Just pull the leash a little more tightly,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, and I'll speak.
All right, no. All right, so all in favor of the bill as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Is there a
Consent.
motion for consent? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Who, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, I'll take this out.
All right.
Thank you. What else do we have? All right, so, SB 431.
341.
I'd like to hold this one more time, just to see if I can get a court ruling on it, to see whether it passes constitutional muster or not. I'm not sure there's enough time to do so, but if we can't get a ruling on it, then you will have to,
A ruling from,
the courts, as to whether this will pass constitutional muster or
I
not.
think this has to go to the committee, be voted and then tabled and then submitted. I think that's the process.
We can do that,
Right.
but I thought maybe if we can get a court ruling before we do that.
You get it, you gotta pass the bill, and then you table it, and then you send it over for advisory opinion. I think that's the way it works. We can check on that.
Unless we wanted,
Yeah, the body has to send it, has to ask for the
how
advisory
can we
opinion.
get an opinion from the Attorney General without having to go through that advisory?
Well, I send in a request, so if,
Yeah. All right, so the advisory opinion's from the court.
Right, so could we,
From the AG, I don't know of any restriction.
yeah, so maybe if that seems like that if you could do that now,
all right,
then
so,
to request to the Attorney General is to get their opinion, or we could do it the way Bob says, but I think it'd be good to have an advisor, the AG first, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the question is,
That's what I
A, what the scope is, and B, whether all remedies have been exhausted, right?
right, so I did send in a request to the AG
Okay.
already.
Okay, I'm thinking when you say advisory opinion, to me, that's from the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So from the AG, so we're gonna hold on and just get,
Okay.
if, some
See if we can get some word from her.
I did, what? I checked with the. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so that's exactly what we're doing.
Good.
Yeah,
All right.
all right, so that's all good, here's the bills. I think that's, we're just waiting for Josh now, so you want to take a little recess and wait for 15 minutes and then find out what language comes up with.
Recess at 8:20?
10 minutes will get us to quarter of.
Yeah, let's do
All
that.
right.
Let's do 10 minutes and we'll recess for 10 minutes.
Using the right clock.
Oh my gosh. Good. So we'll recess.
Apologies for being a few minutes late.
No, you're fine.
You may want to turn off your mics.
Trying to get two little girls to daycare before I make it there for 9.
You're fine.
Senator, your mic's not on.
There it is. Thank you. All
It's a
right.
hard habit to break.
All right, so we have some language
Yes,
for the amendment.
yes.
All right, so let's hear it.
Okay. So would it be helpful to provide maybe a better explanation of what I was trying to explain before, or do you want me to just get straight into the language?
Get straight into it.
Okay. So, you would be striking on page 2, lines 35, continuing on to the next page, page 3 through line 2.
Striking.
Striking all of that language. That language is already contained in
Sorry,
lines.
Josh, before you go.
Yes.
Line 35 through page 3, line 3. Line 2.
Line 2, yes.
Okay, thank you. Please continue.
That language, you're not losing that language. That language is already contained in lines, in page 2, lines 23 through 28. So that talks about
23
what the tariff would be for that.
So C becomes B.
No, not yet, not yet. C is going to stay C. So
Oh.
you would insert a new Roman 4A B
Yeah.
in that section, which would basically be a carbon copy of the language on lines 31 through 34.
On which page?
Excuse me, sorry. Page 2, lines 31 through 34.
Yep.
You would make a carbon copy and make that the new section, subsection B.
Reprint. Okay.
That which would read identically as above with 2 changes. The first change would be so that it would read in the. Actually, I'll just read the whole thing. Facilities eligible for the net metering tariff under this section for customer generators larger than 500 kilowatts
Yeah.
and up to 1 megawatt
Yeah.
with an in-service date of after January 1st, 2022, not acting as a group net metering host, must consume, and then the committee must pick a number of the generation on site on an annual basis.
So is that up to 20 or 20? It'd be up to 20.
It would be,
Oh, I get you.
It'd
Yeah,
be
20,
at least, I
20,
think.
yeah, it would be at least 20. So,
At least 20. Must consume at least 20% of the generation on site.
To get, and what the result is to get the preferred rate.
correct.
Right. Yep.
So are you saying that on line 31, does the existing A get
Stays.
deleted?
No, the existing A stays. So that would stay.
Alright.
You're
That stays there for that level, and then B gets repeated with that change.
Right,
Correct.
so A addresses 100 through 500 kilowatts. B addresses
500.
500 through 1
Gotcha,
megawatt.
okay, all right.
You got that? Could you read that to me, and then we'll get to Senator Gray?
Yeah, so we're getting rid of 35 or 35 to 37 on page 2 and lines 1 to 2 on page 3. We're going to copy and paste 31 through 34 on page 2 to make that the new section B. It's going to read generated larger than 500 kilowatts and up to 1 megawatt with an in-service date after January 1st, 2022 and not acting as a group net metering host must consume at least 20% of the generation on site on an annual basis.
Good.
I would point out that you would still have the dip. So at the 100, if you leave A as it currently reads, you would have from 100 kilowatts up to 500 kilowatts would have to consume a majority. You would then have 500 kilowatts to 1 megawatt must consume at least 20%, and then you would go from 1 megawatt up to 5 megawatts needing 80%.
So I was going to raise that. I mean, what if
Go ahead. I didn't want
Senator
to
Gray's
jump ship.
input will be important here? I mean, what if instead of creating new B, A read projects 100 kilowatts up to 1 megawatt, but we retained the change to 20%.
That would be cleaner, and then if you're over a megawatt, you're at the 80, which is what
Right,
makes sense. So
Right, so less than 1 megawatt would be 20, over 1 megawatt would be the 80.
it really makes sense.
Senator Gray?
I'm certainly not opposed.
Heidi? Josh?
That's a policy decision for the committee.
Right, just clarifying that.
Oh, okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? May I ask a question, Josh?
Yeah.
All right, so Josh, what we would do then is on A here, we would say larger than 100 kilowatts and up to 1 megawatt, and then at least 20%, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, on B,
She's saying no B.
does that get,
ahead. Right.
does that get stricken?
Right, I think under my proposal, we would change C to B, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Let me try making the motion, okay?
Okay.
I move amendment 1053 with following changes.
Okay, you ready?
That on lines 31 through 34,
Yep.
500 megawatts is changed to, 500 kilowatts is changed to 1 megawatt. And that on line 33, instead of the majority, at least 20%. Strike B, renumber C as B, and that's it.
Does that do what we want?
Yes.
And I'm gonna confirm that with Heidi. Only because there's, just having a second opinion really works well here. And a third opinion, Mr. Monahan?
Yes, it seems like appropriate.
Great. And Senator Guy, did you have any comments? All right, so you seconded it, Senator Waters?
I did.
Let's say, okay, so all in favor of the committee amendment? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it goes with the amendment. All right, so all in favor of the, so that's passed. So, is there a motion on the
TPA.
bill?
OTPA.
OTPA with Senator Gray.
Second.
Seconded by Senator Waters, Perkins
Peter.
Quokka.
Yeah.
Discussion.
I'll reiterate my opposition. We're recommending for passage legislation without consideration for the extremely high percentage of ratepayers whose interests are not being served potentially because we're impatient to get this done rather than wait for the PUC to complete its study.
Do you know when the PUC will?
I have no idea.
If I may comment on that, Mr. Chairman, I served on the LEAP committee, as you did, Mr. Chairman, last summer, in which we really looked very, very hard at this. And that committee concluded, yes, the PUC should look at this. But we also had, if you look in the report, a lot of discussion about, at this level, whether there really was cost shifting or not. And one of the problems we ran into with that was that we're not metering. And that, I'm not speaking for Eversource, but it was expressed that the reason that they're not putting in the smart meters is the cost of doing that I won't say it becomes a wash as to what the actual then cost shifting is, but, that was the reason why we don't know. And I'm not sure that PUC looking into it without metering being done, that will really indicate anything, conclusive on that. So the final report of that commission said, be cautious moving forward on these things, but where it makes sense, it's worth considering legislation, so.
And I don't know if there's going to be a significant amount of cost shifting, if there were, but, Senator Guy.
So I don't think that the senators or the committee's uncertainty about the outcome of a PUC study is sufficient justification to saddle the rest of the ratepayers in the state with cost shifting if it does occur. As I said, I support the amendment, I support the principle, I will not support the bill until we have proof, and from the folks whose job it is to provide that proof, as to the rest of the ratepayers in the state. I came here to represent citizens, not to present net metering folks.
Understood. I do think there's a couple of different ways of looking at it, but I certainly understand, and I agree that cost shifting is something that has been a thorn in the side of a lot of this stuff rightly so. So, fair enough.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
And seeing how it's my bill, I'd like to take it out.
You go right ahead.
And I think that's it. Oh, yeah, so, on, let's see,
341.
341, I think we will take that up today. And, is there a motion on 341?
I move interim study.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
So I think the idea here is to follow the procedure that I think you suggested, Senator Gaius. Senator Avard and I had a chance to consult with the staff on that. And so what we're intending is to move interim study. That seems a very accurate motion right now because we are actually waiting further information. On the Senate floor, we will move to table. As part of the discussion on tabling, we will move a resolution to ask for a court opinion. Okay?
Good.
All right.
All in favor of interim study?
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there consent? No, we can only do consent. No, there. Okay, never mind. Strike that. Strike that. I think that's it for today.
Okay.
Pardon me? Me.
Move to come out of executive session.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you all. Really appreciate your work.
Wow, we did it.
Thank you. We did it.
On to the House bills.
Yay, barely. All right.
I think
Good
we
job,
did.
Daley. Good job, Senators.
All right.
Love you.
Great job.
Good work. But the sunshine, you know, I mean, listen, if 262 makes this true, they're gonna be dancing in the streets, even Packaging. So, it's a good, we've got, I had a little conversation with